So for the next session, the guests are already coming on the stage. Dmitry Kalaev will be interviewing our friends from Grabr. Dmitry Kalaev, and now is the time for applause. He's the head of IIDF Accelerator, a man that cries and hugs startups and cares about startups. But this is a good time where you can actually talk to people without trying to figure out what's wrong. And I'm introducing the people that you already know and love. Daria, Rebenok, co-founder and co-CEO, and Artem, Fedyaev, co-founder and co-CEO of Grabr. Okay, don't look at this thing. You do have 30 minutes.
Okay.
Get on.
Hello, everyone. And almost every week I see how some people ask in Facebook his friends to bring something from San Francisco to Moscow or from Moscow to Novosibirsk. And it means they still not use your startup. And maybe you have a few words about how you can help them and what your company do.
Sure. Does it work? Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. So pretty much we built Grabr, which is a marketplace that connects shoppers and travelers around the world. So you can get any product from any country by being connected to a traveler who will bring this product to you for a fee. So pretty much we're connecting and we're solving for the problem that exists around the world, not only in Russia, actually, everywhere in at least 58 countries that we noticed, where people don't have access to products for major, like 3 bigger reasons. Products are just not available, they're extremely expensive in the local markets, or there is no international shipping fee. And travelers who are constantly traveling, they're taking this trip every time they're getting on the plane, and they have this extra space in their suitcase that they can now monetize. So by connecting the two, we're building the platform that allows people to shop around the world.
Okay. This is not your first company, and this company you launched from Russian market, and it was a good decision, or maybe the best way to start abroad from the first day of the company.
Yeah, so when we started the company, before we actually built a product, right, we wanted to test out the waters. And being in digital acquisition since 2011, we used Facebook as an amazing tool to test something out for very cheap money. And of course, Russia was one of the countries, but we tested around 50 markets around the world. And we literally created a landing page that said, if you want to get products from abroad, sign up here. If you want to make money traveling and delivering those products, sign up here. With less than $1,000, we got like 8,000 signups. And we started seeing where are we getting the lowest acquisition and lowest hanging fruit. And actually, Russia was not one of them. People in Russia don't trust advertising, as we believe, with our service. Most that we got were skeptical comments on Facebook, how is this going to work, and so on and so forth. But in reality, in our first company, to build a product, we hired a lot of engineers, that was before Grabr, in San Francisco. And it was super expensive, and it was very challenging to compete with Facebook and Google and other companies for talent. So when we were starting Grabr, one of Daria's college friends, he's here in Moscow, he was working at a company called Dream Industries. And when we shared an idea with him, he was a project manager there, he said, give me 2 weeks, I'll build an engineering team where we can launch this MVP with very small cost. And instead of 2 weeks, it took him 3 days, and he got us a team of 4 best engineers at that time, back end, front end, and we got also a lead designer. That team is still with us 3 years later. And that's how we started in Russia. And since we started in Russia, we had to open a small office. It was actually an ex-wedding agency. Now it's a proper office, but it was a small space. And when we launched our first product, Russia was the first market organically for us to start working. And for the first 3 months, we were doing a lot of testing and experiments specifically here. And I think another reason is we come from Russia, we're from Moscow, so language, customer support, things like that were much easier for us. Especially navigating around this market here. And we started creating this first route between US and Russia, and that's how we started. And then 3 or 4 months later, we slowly started using, once again, our Facebook acquisition experience, and we started launching South America, Southeast Asia, and other markets around the world.
Okay, as I know, you launched the market campaign at first, before you created the product. Russian founders usually prefer to create product a few years, and after this start a marketing campaign. And why you have started from the marketing, and this right way, or maybe it will not the good solution for you?
Well, we found this is actually something that was working for us and is working for us because there's no other way for you to kind of test the waters and understand what people are asking about and what their hesitations are. And we really believe in the paradigm of you actually need to first build a skateboard and only then you will build a car. So you just need to build some MVP, and this is what we started with. We started with a page, and we had a kind of chicken and egg situation because it's a marketplace. What do we go after first, supply or demand? So in order for us to make this decision, we launched some ads, right? We launched some marketing campaigns to understand A, what are the hesitations, B, what are the questions, and C, actually, what are the things that people want? Do they want to become travelers or shoppers? Kind of based on this, we understood that we have a lot of travelers that were signing up, and shoppers started kind of posting their requests. Based on this, we understood what are the products that they want. So taking this data and then relaunching ads using this data that our users were feeding us, we managed to acquire even more audience, kind of using the example of the user-generated content. So in our case, it works, and this is what we continue doing even when we're going to newer markets. For example, when we're launching a new market, we start with Facebook ads. We don't localize it actually in the language first. We started with English, so we're going after early adopters. And then based on what people are asking for, and also early adopters are recommending us pretty much marketing channels, partnerships, as well as they recommend us and they tell us about the challenges that we will be facing in the market. So after that, we start addressing the challenges and we localize the website or the app and add kind of add-ons that enhance user experience.
Yeah, if I can also add, we've seen so many mistakes when people invest into the product, a lot of money and resources and time. Time is the biggest resource, and then the product does not fit. So what we do, what Daria just explained, is we try to test the waters to hear our users for them to drive product development in the future. So first, it's always MVP.
Okay. At the beginning, you are doing marketing by your own, advertising, analytics, and so on. And this is the right way for startups, or you had to do this because a lack of money?
Well, I think, pretty much what we go after and what we use is we definitely use the scrappy and lean approach from the very beginning. And I think it's the biggest mistake that a lot of founders do is when they try to hire a bunch of people or agencies who will do marketing for them without really understanding what is the key messaging, like who is your customer, who are you talking to. Without understanding it, you won't be able to create and set specific expectations to people that you're working with. So up until now, since we have 52 people around the world working on our team, we're still constantly monitoring what are the marketing campaigns that are being launched. And we are setting up new ads for new markets, and we're constantly kind of testing new ideas that we have because we understand the customers. And until the founders really understand how to speak to your customers, what the message to use, no one else will. So that's why I think it's really important not to lose this communication between your vision and final marketing implementation.
And you're still doing it in-house, and you're still doing it by yourself?
Correct. In-house, well, we first started 2 of us. Now we have 10 more people who are helping us out with a lot of different channels, but it all comes kind of top-down.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And more personal question. When founders of a company are husband and wife, it may be risky, and usually investors don't like a company with these risks. And how did you persuade investors that the relations would be help you, not risky for your company?
That's a good question. We get asked that quite a lot of times, and sometimes we have different responses. But I think that there's different types of investors. And we've been through many rounds of fundraising now, and we've met with a lot of different funds and individuals. And yes, we had investors who were right away saying no to us because we're husband and wife team. And a lot of times that could have been based on some other bad experience they might have had in their portfolio, working with husbands and wife. We also had other investors, for example, Kevin Hartz, one of our investors in our seed round about a year and a half ago. He actually built his business with Julia Hartz, who's his wife. They built Eventbrite together. So when he met us, he asked us a lot of tricky questions, such as, how do you guys settle conflicts when you're at home outside of business? Who makes the decisions on certain things, and so on and so forth? And when we responded and we explained how long we've been together and how we deal with those situations, I think he felt the synergy, right? And probably saw the same, like as a reflection of what he has done. So he believed in us. So we didn't have to convince him. But a lot of investors do ask this question, yes.
Yeah, I think definitely what helps in this case is the track record, right, of our metrics. Right now, it's really like we've been this far, and we're still growing, and we still have not divorced, and we're still together building the company. And track record helps, but also references from investors who have invested in us, who have worked with us. They know how we kind of behave during the meetings. How do we separate our tasks? What are the responsibilities that I'm responsible for? What are the things that Artem is in charge of? And what really has helped us, and this is what a lot of investors actually ask us, is exactly how do we separate and how do we delegate tasks? What works for us is just we know what are the areas which we are kind of have the best expertise on, and we do trust each other. Definitely at the beginning we made a lot of mistakes, kind of overstepping each other boundaries and trying to do too many things at the same time, but then we just realized that it's just much easier to delegate to each other and just make kind of together most important business decisions. But if I'm responsible, for example, for marketing and customer experience, Artem trusts 100% that I'm going to make the best judgment for the company. The same, I have the 100% trust in what Artem is going to do about product. And of course, we have a way to kind of recommend each other and share some of the ideas, which we take into account. But in the end, I think what really helps is the best feedback and the most direct feedback and honest feedback, because if you don't listen to it and you just get offended by it, because it's like counterproductive. So this is kind of our credo, right? This is how we live by.
But actually, when your family you really works on your product 24 hours, 7 days a week. And also, when you sit at guest room, you said that the friendship is more difficult than family relations. Maybe a few words about this situation and why friendship was more difficult.
Sure, yes. I started my first company before Grabr. It was a virtual reality company with a friend of mine who went to college together. We're still very good friends. But when you're doing business with a friend, no matter how big of a friends you are, there's always things like ego that step into play. There's a lot of arguments that we need to settle. And at the end of the day, we after work, we go to different homes, right? So we all have different lives. But being in a relationship, we work 24/7. We actually invented Grabr in our kitchen on a Saturday. So I think being together for more than 10 years, we already know that there's no point of arguing because we share the bank account anyway, right? So I think that for me, it was actually easier to build something with my wife rather than build it with a friend.
Okay, thank you. And investors, and I'm guilty in this too, usually ask stupid questions. That tell you that your business is illegal, somebody do this and they failed, they tell they not believe in your business and so on and so forth. And how you manage with this? What you say to investors, how you improve your presentation and how it works for you?
Definitely, there's a few parts to this question. So first of all, someone has already tried this and they failed. I mean, what we're building something. The idea is not new. We've not invented the idea. Everyone around the world faces a problem like this, and people have been bringing stuff to each other before tech even existed for like hundreds of, probably thousands of years. The action is really who's going to execute the best, who are the best founders and the best team they can gather around, including the investors, to execute on this project. So I think that's the most important thing. And of course, the legality part and regulation is one of the questions we get asked every investment meeting. And every time we iterate, we prepare, right? And if we don't have a good answer to the question, we'll go back, do our homework, and in the next meeting, we have a proper answer. Of course, we spend a lot of time working with legal teams across the world, and we really built a model that actually works.
Yeah, I would add that, well, pretty much different stages of funding, different rounds of funding require different types of answers because you have different questions, new questions, that you were not asked when you were raising seed, for example, or raising A. And of course, before we go into fundraising, we prepare, right? And we go to the funds, we write down all of the questions, as Artem said, and then we figure out, okay, what is the better way to answer those questions, or were we satisfied with our answer? So pretty much what one of our favorite advisors and investors told us is, if you leave a fundraising meeting without any lesson that you learned, just pretty much decide that you failed and you wasted your time. Because from every single meeting, you need to learn something. And this is kind of how we live by, and this is how we go to fundraising. And I think it all really comes down to like product market fit and founder product fit. We've proven product market fit from very beginning. People are already doing it. I think it all really comes down to founder product fit, right? Are these people the right people to do this job? Do they really understand the problem? Do they really understand the product? And in our case, because we're coming from Russia, living in the US, facing the same exact problem, and having experience bringing products back, definitely tells the story. Plus, definitely, if you don't have metrics and you don't have traction, those two things are not going to help you. But these are like 3 important things that investors really need to see in you.
And also one interesting thing, when we were preparing for our Series A round, we worked closely with Signal Fire VC. That's one of our existing funds from partners from our seed round. And as we were going through these meetings and we were getting questions in meetings that we didn't know how to answer, we were not prepared, we went back home, did our homework, and we actually added a slide into the presentation because we knew that these questions are very popular. So instead of waiting for the questions to be asked at the end, we actually put them in the deck right away to kind of show the importance that we're thinking about it and so on and so forth. And that was the advice we got, and it actually worked well.
Yeah, actually, when you leave the meeting without any lessons, it's the strange meeting. And for many startups, the main idea is that if investors ask something, it's actually matter for them. And also, we will have a few minutes for your questions, and it's time to prepare it. And if you talk about the market, one of the hardest questions for startups company is about the size of the market. Usually I see that company just take some analytics from Gartner or other companies and say, oh, this is a market with a few $1 billion, and we just take 5% of this market. And actually it doesn't make any sense. I know that you estimate your market is very precisely, and please share your approach how you do this.
Yes, so in order to estimate our market, it's actually a very challenging job because we're building something very new. We're going into an area that has completely no transparency right now, and we're actually bringing controls into the marketplace to collect this data. But of course, I agree with you. When startups say, oh, I saw this article, we're going to take 3% of the market, I would ask, why not 4? Why not 2? How do you even determine that, right? So what we did, we said, all right, if United States is going to be our biggest supply market, just based on the data we're seeing already on our platform, let's look at the top 20 e-commerce websites in the United States. Let's look at Amazon, eBay, Macy's, Apple, and so on and so forth. You can do this with SimilarWeb Pro account easily. We looked at all the international traffic coming in from the markets we were interested in. We looked at 30 markets in South America. We looked at India and Southeast Asia, and also Russia, and a few countries in Eastern Europe. We look at the amount of traffic coming in, we compare the international shipment options, and then we also said, all right, if the average conversion rate for an e-commerce store for an actual purchase would be, let's say, 2.5% in Brazil or 1.7% in Peru, we put that math together and create a formula that there's at least 50 million people in those markets who would be willing to purchase in those United States stores who don't have international shipment options. This is our monthly market. Then we multiply it by 12 and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and just if we can get the 1% of that, right, this is a pretty substantial market. That is interesting for Silicon Valley investors. So this is kind of how we went about it.
Okay, thank you. Your investor board is very impressive. You have a top of investor from Yale, Facebook, Founders Fund. Please share some pieces of advice how to attract this level of investors. What you do and how magic works.
Well, there's a lot of things that come together. A lot of hard work, a little bit of luck, and a lot of hard work again. But I think some of the main things is you need to build your network. And there's different ways for you to build your network. There's people who go to conferences and other events. There's people who work hard, and then they have a friend of a friend who sees that hard work and introduces them to someone. But I think what's most important is to get the best investors is to tell the story that's very truthful and the story that you really believe in yourself, and that's when the investors will believe in it. I think some of the best advices that I got is if you go into a meeting and you don't know how to answer a question, just say, I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it out. And this will give a confidence to the investor that maybe this is the right person to figure it out, because at the end of the day, we're people who are figuring out problems, not trying to sell a pitch deck, right? So I think that's one of the best advices that I got.
Well, I would say this is actually something that previous speakers were talking about. Definitely in the Valley, warm introduction actually works. Really rarely like cold emails nowadays work. It's really, really hard. So you really need to find this person, right, who can make a warm intro. There are a lot of different tools and platforms right now that like kind of help you find through your network people who can give a warm intro. But in our case, it really started from one introduction to Kevin Hartz, who is a very well-respected entrepreneur and very well-respected investor in the Valley. He was the first investor at Airbnb, pre-seed stage, first invested at Uber. So he saw in us exactly what he saw in Uber and Airbnb. And this is exactly what he told us. And definitely having introductions from him to funds such as Sequoia, Andreessen Horowitz, Foundation Capital, and so on, definitely helps. People would take those meetings, right? And then pretty much it's hard work and a little bit of luck, right? It's whether you can persuade those investors that you're the right person, and why does Kevin, for example, in our case, believe in you, and then why are those funds believe in you? And then it all comes down to metrics. And how well you're doing, how well you're presenting yourself, how well do you answer your questions. But most importantly, of course, investors who have previously invested in your round and then participate in the round again, it definitely tells a really big story to the new investors who are pitching to. Do they believe in you? Are you doing well? Are you doing a good job? Right? Because this definitely sends a really big signal if investors from previous round don't invest in the next round.
How many investors right now do you have, and how many investors say no, but you have meetings with them?
Well, we don't keep track of numbers like that, but you know, they say that you need to, if you're doing like an equity round, let's say seed or Series A, we went through Series A last year, you need to meet with probably 40, 50 funds to get a first term sheet. But after you get the first term sheet, suddenly there's more interest from those who even already said no. They might also come back to the table. They're always looking. I also in the previous speakers mentioned that there needs to be someone who's going to lead the round, and if that someone is who's going to lead the round and do diligence is going to give you that term sheet, then it's easier to get more investors into the round. For example, in our previous round, it's called something that we oversold the round, which means we had more interest after we got a term sheet from Foundation Capital than the money we actually needed based on the round we were open to. And that's a really good position to be as a founder because you can actually choose what kind of partners you want to have on your team, because at the end of the day, these are the people you're going to spend the next years working with.
What the main challenges have you faced at UA, and what have you learned from these challenges?
Well, there are a lot of learnings definitely along the way. I would say that actually the thing that resonated with me, like from previous speakers, is like about some of the challenges and problems that Russian startups are facing. They're just going super hyper local, and it's extremely like difficult to grow globally. What we did, we actually started global from day one. Well, month two, pretty much, right? Once we had MVP. And this is definitely shows the product market fit around the world, and it shows the opportunity and the global opportunity that, well, we have a playbook. We can figure it out. Like we figured out to manage 7 markets, right? Until now, when actually Airbnb went global, when they had already over $100 million in monthly, like in yearly sales in United States, right? So for us, it's a challenge, right? You need to figure out what are the marketing channels, what is the messaging that resonates. Localization definitely is like a ceiling that you hit if you start with English and then you understand that in order to attract more audience, people who will be spending money, you need to localize. It adds complexity to the operations, to the team management, and definitely to managing too many markets at the same time. So this was the major challenge, but we also went into this challenge deliberately, right? We probably didn't know how difficult it's going to be, but we understood that it's not a typical Uber or Airbnb model where you have playbook and you just launched it. So we were figuring it out ourselves, but now we have learned how to kind of apply the playbook, what is our playbook actually, and how to launch new markets efficiently and scalably. So this is the biggest learning. Second biggest learning is probably related to people and hiring the right people. And you think that you're going to hire a lot of people. This is the mistake that we made and what we learned from it. You hire a lot of people and you think, okay, they're going to do as great as you would do it. But they don't, and unless you have a necessary amount of communication and you have, we call it like the flow, right? Once you're on the same flow, then people understand and then they execute the way you need. And also another challenge that we had is we have international team and we have 52 people working in 4 offices, but actually 6 countries around the world. And this is tough. Well, for us, it's really 24-hour day because we start in some kind of Moscow time, which is 11 p.m. for us, and then finish San Francisco time. So this is definitely difficult. It's not for everyone. Anything from you?
Well, I think also going global from day one creates a lot of challenges for your product, right? At one point, we realized that we have so many customers in Brazil and Argentina and in Russia, and we see about 50% of these people who are swiping their credit cards are not getting a decline or not getting their transaction to come through. And we started asking this question, why is this happening? And we realized that we need to localize our payments. And to localize our payments, we actually had to spend 6 months and have 3 engineers working on it. And while we were doing it, we faced so many challenges. So we met with one of the head of products at Airbnb, who's actually part of their payments team. And he looked at me and said, why are you guys trying to solve this with 3 engineers in Moscow? I'm like, well, that's something we have to do because we're seeing so much growth opportunity. And he says, we have 140 engineers at Airbnb working on the same problem. Yes, we support 130 countries, he said, but we still do payouts in India with Western Union up until recent. And I was like, well, this is something we have to do because unlike Airbnb, we don't have a luxury of being a local company and scaling local growth. To get to maybe, I don't know, $100 million valuation, we have to be global. And actually, in 6 months, we built an infrastructure. Now we partnered with an Israeli company called dLocal, with a Brazilian company called eBanks. And we're one of the first small US companies to offer payment in installments and cash-based payments for Latin American customers in United States stores. So I think now we're not even a marketplace anymore. We're also partially a fintech company. We had no idea about this about a year ago. So that's some of the things we have to face and things we have to overcome.
Thank you. And many serial entrepreneurs thinking about exit from day one. Are you building a startup company for sale, for exit, or for yourself? And why do you think so?
Well, I mean, we're definitely started this company based on the personal experience. We actually you probably read articles about us if you read them. We wanted something from Europe and there was no service. So we built this not as a business, we built this as something we wanted as a service. And then as we started building it and we saw that people around the world are in the same situation or even worse, because we live in San Francisco, most spoiled place in the world, and people in Argentina cannot get an Amazon.com delivery, right? So we see how big this opportunity is, and we definitely are on the path to build a very big and sustainable company. We really want to follow the path of Airbnb and similar. I mean, as every founder, yes, we work 24/7. We do get tired sometimes. And I mean, at one point, depending on our state of mind, if there would be a great acquisition offer, who knows? But at this stage, I think we're very early and we still have so much to give to this company and make it big. So I think right now we're definitely building it for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes down to having an amazing offer from a company that we, A, share the vision of, and also B, share the values, because for us it's really important what our company values and whether they resonate with the values of the company or someone who would present an acquisition offer, we'll consider only in case it's kind of mutual, it's aligned, but also if we can stay within the company, right? Because we're not building it all, let's just build a company and sell it and go and relax. It's not what we're doing. It's not why we're doing this. There are a lot of other ways to make money differently.
Actually, it's too hard to be passionate for the company if you're doing for the exit. If you do it for yourself, it's quite reasonable to be passionate about this. So we have 3 minutes for your questions. If you have questions, just raise your hand and we will give you a microphone.
Hello, my name is Evgeny. Thank you for a very nice presentation and information from you. What was my question is, what was your best, not best, but the biggest challenge from the idea to action, from the idea part to action part? What was the biggest challenge for you?
Well, you can.
It's going to be a very interesting answer. When we got the idea, we were actually working on a completely different project. It was called MyVR, a virtual reality company. And we put this idea, we literally drew it on a napkin, like in a movie, in our kitchen. And we put it in a drawer, and for the next 4 months, our friends and family were convincing us to start a company, and we're saying, no, we don't have time. So the biggest challenge to move from idea to the product was to actually figure out how we can manage 2 companies at once. And for about 4 months, we ran 2 companies at once until we fully switched. So that was my challenge.
Well, I think for me it was not really a problem of a challenge from idea to an action. It was more like, okay, what do I need to do to make this action happen? And like, how do I need to find time? What can I not do so that I can do this, right? So that's probably finding time and understanding that if you want to do it well, you really need to commit to it like 100% and not just trying to run some startup on the side.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, you will have a time for talking with Daria and Artem at the coffee break. Daria, Artem, thank you very much. It was actually very interesting, and I think it will be useful. As for me, it will be useful. It was useful for me, actually. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Спасибо.